had a lot of heroes over the years. Many were heroes I could relate to, heroes I could see myself in and make mistakes with, and to understand my own personal flaws through. But there lies another type of hero, a hero that has and will always inspire me to do better. And while there's been many of those, none hold up quite as well as Luke Skywalker. Simply put, to me, Luke is not just a character I think is good, nor is he just the main character of one of my lifelong favorite franchises. Luke Skywalker is a character that has inspired me to do better in my own life. I can link actions Luke has taken within the films to things in my life I've actively tried to make better. Whether it be something as simple as making breakfast for my mom, to befriending ignored kids in class, to understanding how to be the best person I can be. You see, I've been a lifelong Star Wars fan. I was shown the original trilogy before I was even old enough to comprehend the world, let alone the Force, and I saw each of the prequels in theater. For Christmases all throughout my childhood, I'd unwrap action figures, those plug-and-play game systems, and an array of different colored lightsabers. My cousin and I would throw blankets around our bodies and run around the house reenacting scenes from the film. We would choreograph our own lightsaber duels, we would force push each other onto sets of cushions that we stole from the couch, and then probably end the day by watching one of the movies or playing through one of the Lego games on our PlayStation. It was everything to the two of us. And who I thought was cooler than anyone else, who ranked as one of the grand heroes of our childhood, was Luke Skywalker. Because I've been a lifelong optimist. I've always tried my best to see the good in things, and Luke was instrumental in that, showing that you can topple an empire of hate and evil with the help of your loved ones, and that you can overcome any evil within you or directed at you, and you can reach out and help others even in their darkest moments. Which might sound simple, I know, but to a brown kid growing up in the white suburbia, that was exactly what I needed to hear at that age, that my hopes of crafting a better future for myself were valid. And at some other random point in my childhood, I realized there was a person behind Luke Skywalker, or I guess I just finally learned what actors were, and I heard the name Mark Hamill for the first time. And I remember asking who that was, and my mom actually laughed. "That's Luke Skywalker," she said, or at least the person who plays him. And then she had to explain to me who it was, and I was shocked for a moment, but then the whole thing seemed to make sense. But I think what made things even weirder was I was watching an episode of Justice League later that week, and Mark Hamill was in the credits! So I went on our computer, or I guess more aptly put, I waited for our computer to be open and I went online. And Mark Hamill was the Joker? Like, I was floored! Because that was like the big bad of the episode. I think in some ways I might have felt betrayed, because he was the hero after all. Why would he play the Joker? But, I think I got over it after a little while, and I started noticing his name everywhere after that. In each Joker appearance, Fire Lord Ozai, hell, even Master Eraqus from Kingdom Hearts. He felt like he was everywhere, and he was just popping up in so many things that I loved growing up, and everything I read online said he was just, he was a solid dude. Like, the first Q&A I ever remember watching was one for him for some Star Wars thing, and I remember thinking about how nice he was to everyone. Like, he's just like Luke, just maybe without a lightsaber. Then someone gave him a lightsaber and it was all complete. So, in some ways, it was, an all-around validating experience to know that the hero and actor alike were great. And because, reality seemed just like the films as a kid, I kept my, that simple, very hopeful mindset for years. I always thought that when I got older, I would be a part of something that would change and create a better future. And well, then I grew up. This might sound kinda cliche, but I did what many kids did. I went away to college and finally left my hometown, filled with those same hopes of trying to make the world better and going off to better myself. And that didn't exactly happen. When I went away, I guess I learned things that are a bit more complicated than that. I spoke and met so many people that had grown up completely different than I had. Things that I put up with in my hometown paled in comparison to some of the other people I met. I met girls who carried weapons on them because they can't feel safe without it. Homeless students kicked out by their families for just their sexual orientation, and just all kinds of people I was lucky enough to meet and learn from. And now, I understand oppression shouldn't be a competition, but the whole takeaway from all these people seems to be that the world we live in isn't perfect, and there's not really any clear-cut way to deal with it all. The problems people have can't just be fixed by having hope that they'll get better. But there's not even really a clear system in place to help bolster people back up. So the simple message of hope wasn't really doing it for me anymore. And then, well, the 2016 election hit everyone around me really hard. And at that point, I was really lost. I didn't understand anything I could do to inspire any kind of hope in people because it felt like the last bits of my optimism were draining, and, even if they had any place being there at all. And it was at this point when I first heard the reviews coming out for The Last Jedi. And it was filled with super conflicting reports. People loved it, some people hated it. And then I read Mark Hamill's own take on the movie and how disappointed he was with the direction of the movie. And I didn't even know how to feel. Like, if he didn't like it, if Luke himself didn't like it, this might have been the thing that would really blow things up for me. Like Star Wars, if a simple story was this nice nostalgic thing I could rely on to help boost my mood, if just for the moment. And to hear that that might not be the case anymore really worried me. Like, honestly, I was scared walking into that theater for the showing and scared that it might change everything I thought and knew about one of my lifelong favorite franchises. And then I saw it. And I loved it. I understand that not everyone agrees with that. I'm not here to convince you, and I'm not really here to justify my reasons. I'm just here to say thank you to Mark Hamill because despite his reservations about the writing of the movie, I couldn't be happier with his performance in the film. Because Luke Skywalker was a hero to me. He was someone who could do no wrong. I mean, how could he? He destroyed the Death Star. He felt like the ideal. Not like me, who was full of mistakes and shortcomings, but when the film begins with him being confused and irritable and just lost, I couldn't help but feel some connection with him. For the first time, I could understand this character who I placed on such a pedestal. Just like when I went away and realized the world isn't great and there's not much I can do, so did Luke, and he realized that he can't do everything and his limitations blew up in his face. I know people don't like this Luke, but to me he just read as someone who was getting older and tired and frustrated with the world around him. That's why he threw the lightsaber off, that's why he refused to tune Rey, and that's why I think it's good. Because it's not like he needs to have some grand revelation. His understanding is almost a burden. His cutting at words against the Jedi are totally correct. That's the whole point of the prequels. Good, bad movies, whatever. They're about the faux utopia of the Jedi and how that breeded Darth Vader. That's the story of the prequels. So, a Luke who learns that knows it's not as simple as putting the Jedi back on top. Because the Jedi believe a flawed ideology. But there's also no clear answer what to do after. So, what can we really have hope in? And that's sad, but it's also a great interrogation of not just how we understand Star Wars, but how we understand hope. And in true fashion, the only way you're able to break out of something like that is through the help of someone else. Rey and Luke's relationship also reminded me that learning and working with people is at least the first step. And that step isn't always easy. If anything, it's really difficult. And the movie treats it that way. It takes the combined efforts of everyone. And maybe if just for the heck of it, that's kind of why I wanted to include my interpretation of the ending of The Last Jedi. I don't think it's a new thing to say this movie has a lot of references to the original trilogy in the final scenes. People say they're just rehashing the scenes and it doesn't make any sense, but I don't think of it that way. Yes, the scenes are similar, but they're very consciously different. Because the whole movie is about how the past is a series of failures. There's no golden age you can return to because there's never been true balance to the Force, because the past has always been flawed. Prequel or original, both of these worlds failed. So you need to create something new. Of course, you can't just let the past die. You have to move forward with the knowledge of what hasn't worked. That's why Rey still has the text at the end, because she's trying to create something new that works in the future, but also doesn't want to repeat the mistakes, like, everyone else around her. Luke shows up to face Kylo and says the line, "Strike me down," but it's not about him becoming more powerful than you can imagine. It's, "I'll always be with you." Thus making the focus of the scene less about who's stronger and about Luke genuinely reaching out to Kylo one last time to try to get him to understand. Poe's whole thing has been thinking ahead and not rushing in blind. Same with Finn. He can't just have that one-track mind of destroying whatever the thing's name is, and Rose is there to berate him and point out that that same kind of blind faith in nothing isn't going to help anyone. And lastly, and most importantly, Luke's final scene where he fades away recalls the same sunset he gazed upon as a young kid. One of my favorite scenes in the original and now the new trilogy. He missed his ride with Rey, but that didn't stop him, because there's never a wrong time to try and do the right thing. And yes, the act is huge, but what he's really doing is giving Rey a minute, a chance to save the Resistance. He's not really fighting, he's just doing his part to give that chance. And Rey, who now understands the Force, can finally see past just moving rocks. And so in that, he is able to give hope again. And that's why Luke's role in this movie is so great to me. Simplicity is fine, and I'm sure that message of the preferred Star Wars film would have been fine. But this Luke showed me that things are more complicated, and you can be lost and unsure. But ultimately, it's still worth trying to fight back against oppression, even if it's just for giving the next generation a slim chance at something better. And that's hope to me. That's how Luke Skywalker inspired me again. Of course, I know there are several components that made up this movie. It's not just Mark Hamill's performance, because I have to say, my mom, who I saw the movie with, getting to see her childhood hero, General Leia, fly through space with the Force and the excitement on her face, there's so much more to talk about that I can't squeeze into one whole video. The whole cast, everyone was so good in their roles, and look, I understand if you don't like the movie, but it is never alright to harass the actors for just taking part in it. Like, Kelly Marie Tran, Daisy Ridley, and everyone, I'm so sorry that you've had to put up with the harassment from fans, and I genuinely can't wait to see what happens with Rose and Rey and everyone else in the next film. And Rian Johnson, thank you so much for just dreaming up this film. But of course, Mark Hamill, a lot of things I read online have been mixed, and I don't know exactly how you feel now, but I want you to know, through all of this, as someone who's been a fan of every movie, you've been instrumental in helping me. So thank you. Thank you for being the hero I needed as a kid. And thank you for being the hero I needed as an adult. And of course, this is just a movie, and I'm sure it's not perfect in a lot of ways either. But this is just me wanting to express some joy because it's been a year since it's been out, and I wanted to finally say something. But for now, that's all I got. May the Force be with you all, and I'll see you next time.